Hi, it's Mike Leahy, Swan TV. Welcome to the Swan Show, where I'm talking to ordinary people doing extraordinary things. People from Swansea and interesting events. Let's see what we can do. To start with, I have Keith Milward, Rob Salmon, and I'm going to talk to Keith first. Mr. Showbiz. In fact, I was going to sing, but I thought better of it. I thought I'd leave that to Keith.
There's no business like show business.
That's the one. If you're in the industry at all, within 50 miles of Swansea, you'll know Keith. He knows everybody. He's done everything to do with musical theatre, and he travels constantly to watch shows in London, Bristol, and Cardiff. So you may have seen this show, which is regular here now on Swan TV, but we don't know much about Keith himself. So let's find and do a little digging. Keith, it's lovely to have you here.
Well, thank you for having me.
So let's just talk about how you started in showbiz.
Out of the chapel, I suppose, because Welsh chapels, what a wonderful way to start. There were operettas, we used to call them, more like pantomimes. And my very first role was an elf in Snow White. So I was one of the 7 dwarfs, and I think I could still fit in the costume. I haven't grown very much. But no, it was a wonderful start. And, we did others like Sleeping Beauty, and we were all in it together. And to me, it meant so much. Now, when the productions would come to an end, the other children would carry on with whatever they get on with, sport or whatever. But I felt as if I was a bear with a sore head or somebody, that I didn't quite know what to do with myself. It was devastating. I never wanted the end of the run to finish. So when I was older then, after having done my university days, I came back to Swansea, and I joined Swansea Amateur Operatic Society. And operatic societies in those days were quite different to what they are now.
Was that mainly Gilbert and Sullivan type thing?
No, it was, I wanted to be in things written by Rodgers and Hammerstein. And the very first show was The King and I. And what a start, because a fellow member of the cast, one of the little girls, was Catherine Zeta-Jones.
Wow.
So, it's nice to start big, isn't it? And the second show I did with Swansea Amateurs was My Fair Lady. And a young lady who has proved herself again and again in London's West End since, Rhea Jones, was playing the part of Eliza Doolittle. So I feel that those shows were, again, they were, in my mind, magnificent, and they really were. I still think that when we were directed by a gentleman called Bob Marlowe in business, I feel that in some ways his production of My Fair Lady would rank amongst one of the best things I've ever been in. And when we all got to do Get Me to the Church on Time, that particular production number, I don't think I've ever seen bettered. It was just incredible. It looked like a cast of thousands, but we were coming on, and then another group would be coming on, and it really was terrific. From being with amateur circles, with the Swansea Amateur Operatic Society and Abbey Players, I then wanted to set up my own theatre company.
Right.
I'd seen a production of A Little Night Music. Now that's a show that contains Scent and the Clowns. And that was in Chichester, and I became like a dog with a bone. I wanted to put on A Little Night Music and bring it to Swansea. Mm-hmm. And so I set up a company. You look back and you think, well, how did I have the goal? How did I come to do this? But it was sheer love of the piece, and I got into Stephen Sondheim's works, and I was so proud of A Little Night Music. I felt I had the best of Swansea talent in it. And anyone who knows Stephen Sondheim's work, you can't mess around. You know, you have to know your music, you have to know your acting to get through it. And it turned out a dream, and it was put on the Dylan Thomas Theatre, 1994. And the Grand Theatre was coming up to being 100. And the manager of the Grand at the time asked if we would mount our production of A Little Night Music in the Grand Theatre as part of the 100 years celebrations. Now, if the little boy Keith Milward, the one who was playing the dwarf in Snow White, if he'd been told you will direct a show in the Grand Theatre for the 100 year celebrations, no way would I have believed them. And so, yes, and another thing that happened, and they say life begins at 40. It was in my mid-30s. I was asked to join a professional singing choir. Now,
Rob, do you sing or dance or enjoy the theatre?
I like going to the theatre.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that just takes you out of your time and space.
oh, yes.
Complete fiction and imagination. Brilliant.
It's
Really nice.
escapism, isn't it?
Yes.
I think
Yeah,
we
good word.
need that these days.
Yeah,
don't we?
it's
And,
nice to take all the worldly stuff away and just enjoy being entertained.
Oh, definitely.
I love musical theatre, but carry on, Keith.
Yes, well, I was going to mention about Black Mountain Male Chorus of Wales, as we were known in America. And it was a chance visit to Llandilo that took me to Las Vegas, shall I say, because the manager of Black Mountain Male Chorus of Wales, Mike Evans, who many know in the area or knew in the area because of his music, because of his radio work in particular. But anyway, he had been contacted by an American company to tour a Welsh choir. And because the general choirs, most were working or with their wives or partners, whatever, they couldn't get to the situation to go. So Mike Evans set up Black Mountain Male Chorus, and he aimed to get younger people. So I was even one of the oldies then, in my mid-30s, but the average age was 25.
Gosh.
But we did 5 major tours of America, and as well as the experience, which actually, if you put the 5 tours together, it stretches over a year altogether. You know, so a year of my life I spent singing in America. And in this country, we were known as the official singing group of the Rugby World Cup.
Oh.
And we recorded with Shirley Bassey and Bryn Terfel, and we were in the charts with the World in Union. If you can stretch your mind back to 1999, we were in the charts with that song, with Shirley Bassey, with Bryn Terfel, and Black Mountain Male Chorus of Wales. At the same time, I was asked to be in professional productions of pantomime then, and the great Stan Stennett asked me to join his company. And I've been playing in some pantomimes more locally, and some of those were extremely high standard, with Austrian players, and then with Llanelli. Some people know Denny Tup in the Llanelli pantomimes. Well, I was with them for about 10 years, but then did over 10 years with Stan Stennett. And, you know, you pick up from these people, you know, I think we're all the same. You were saying about comedy, and, you know, we pick up and learn so much from others. And I still feel I'm learning.
That's incredible. You've had a whirlwind
Yes,
career, haven't you,
and of course,
really?
more recently, in the last 10 years, I've become more involved with radio.
Yeah, tell us about your radio shows, because
yes.
here you are on Swan TV, but radio, you've been doing that for a long time, haven't you?
Yes, I suppose it started, and I'll mention Mike Evans again, because his radio work, he was chairman of Radio City, the hospital radio in Singleton, and I did 3 years quite solidly with the hospital radio in the mid-80s, And I sort of missed it after a while. I was doing all the theatre and I thought something's missing. And it's all chance. So many things are chance. And I was pushing on a production, directing a production of Godspell. And I was invited by the Gorsinan mayor, because the show was going to be in Gorsinan, to an evening, to a meal. And I was on the same table as Radio Tir Coed. And I said, well, I very much would like to be with Radio Tir Coed. And they said, well, if you're interested, come down next week. And I expected to go in and walk in and sort of walk. And the lady, Caroline Carpenter, got me to be in the hot seat straight away, you know, and she was excellent, you know, it's all to do with training and learning from others. Yeah. And I thought, I can't believe I'm doing this, you know, especially doing, you know, I thought I can chat, but not to do all the controls. I thought that was other people who were more technical than me. But then, of course, you know, you do learn. It's like driving, you know, you really learn when you're left on your own. And then I started interviewing local groups and then some local professionals, and then it seemed to go a bit wider. And these days we have guests as well as lots of local guests. We have guests from Cardiff productions, West End productions, and there are even links to Broadway. And you know, again, it blows my mind to think that this has happened. But it's great, and of course, more recently, so I've been with Radio Tir Coed for 10 years, 5 years now with Radio Cardiff, and of course with yourselves and with Swan TV, as well as Bay TV previously. But I congratulate all that you have done and what you have done with this channel.
We try, and it's wonderful. When I get guests like yourselves, it just makes it so easy, you know. So I'm really happy that you're doing your show, and I'm happy to hear your story because, as I said, we all see you interviewing, but we don't know where you've come from. And to hear this is absolutely
thank you for being interested. Thank you very much.
Let me just talk to Rob now and see what he does, which is a little bit of
It's a bit different.
It's very different. We talk about disasters, and there are disasters all over the world at the moment, constantly. And we see people going and helping from other countries. My next guest, Rob, it does exactly that. So let's find out a little bit more. Rob, tell us, it's lovely to have you here, tell us about your organisation.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. So React Disaster Response, we're a humanitarian disaster response charity. I've been lucky enough to be involved with the organisation for about nearly 5 years now. Started as a volunteer, and almost within sort of 6-7 months I was on my way to the Bahamas in the aftermath of Hurricane Dorian, which was a Category 5 hurricane that did an awful lot of damage in 2 sets of islands in the Caribbean, so in Grand Bahama, excuse me, and Abaco, the Abaco chain, and lots of people lost livelihoods, property, family members, lots of devastation. Lots of people lost their lives, unfortunately, and the organisation that we are, the work that we do, is all about going to places where people have just had the worst time of their lives as quickly as we can, and helping those people restart the process of rebuilding their lives after whatever the terrible event has been.
Gosh. But you not only work abroad, you do a lot of work in this country as well.
We do. 2020, obviously, COVID hit the world and pretty much stopped us going overseas to help people because of the travel restrictions. And we turned our focus onto domestic work, domestic activities. So we did all sorts of things all around the country. We worked in temporary mortuaries, we worked in intensive care units in hospitals, we worked with places that would provide getting food to people and water, and there was lots of vaccination centres, testing in care homes, knocking on people's doors and leaving them with test kits so that they could do their own tests, and then we would pick them up in the evening and take them for analysis. In Swansea, we worked in a known as a make-ready facility, but essentially an ambulance decontamination station at Singleton Hospital.
Yeah.
And as we were discussing before, if you've got a number of ambulances in Milford, for example, before the make-ready facility came into being, when those ambulances needed cleaning because somebody had been quite poorly in the back and the inside was contaminated potentially with the COVID virus, they would go to somewhere like Tredegar maybe for to be cleaned, but that would keep an ambulance off the road for 3 or 4 days. So when we were involved, we took over from the army because they'd done quite a sterling job before us, but when we took over from that, and we had teams of volunteers working in shifts for I think 5 or 6 weeks in the summer, and then another 6 or 7 weeks as we got towards Christmas, and we could turn those ambulances around in about 3 or 4 hours, which made such a difference, of course, to the availability of ambulances in South and West Wales, and also for the crews. They were able to come in and sit in our little sort of our rest room, have a cup of tea, maybe a biscuit, I don't know, and just relax for an hour or so until the next ambulance was ready to go out, and then they would take that way. But yeah, it was very good, and the numbers of people that we helped just grew and grew throughout the whole 3 years, and we've translated that now into we have a UK-wide regional setup, and I'm the regional lead in Wales, and we work very closely with the local resilience forums, the local authorities, and the statutory responders, the fire, police, ambulance services, to make sure that when people have potentially the worst time of their lives, then if they need stuff doing that perhaps those statutory bodies can't provide or don't have the resources or the facilities to do, if we can help, then we'll step in and do something.
That's very interesting.
It's fantastic work.
I know it's in a different sort of scale, but I remember the Salvation Army would always go to events with a tea truck, with a tea van, and they'd offer tea to all of the people involved. And I thought that was remarkable. I haven't seen them now doing that for. I
think they still do it, and certainly when during the COVID thing, when we've worked with various health boards and in hospitals. In fact, I did something very similar myself in the hospital in Worcester, and we went along and essentially we were looking after people in the waiting room in the accident and emergency department, either both patients who hadn't yet been seen or their family who were with them, making sure they got cups of tea and a sandwich or a biscuit or whatever it might be. And because there were lots of ambulances waiting outside to get their patients into the hospital, then we were able to make sure the crews were okay as well, which is just as important, because if they're not looked after, if they're not comfortable and fed and watered, and then the service they provide isn't as good. So there's a knock-on effect.
We think of first responders as going to disasters abroad, but these more mundane types of work are just as vital in keeping things running, aren't they?
Absolutely, and we quite often find that our services are most needed and most appreciated doing just the little things that just nobody else has really got either time or resource for. So, for example, when people came over from Sudan after the recent political fallout there, we sent people to Birmingham and Stansted and Gatwick airports to help receive those people into the UK and then make sure that they got whatever it was they needed. So some of those people, for example, because they're UK citizens, they needed just to get home. But home might be some distance away from the airport they'd flown into, so we would help get them to a hotel where they could stay overnight before getting on a train or hiring a car or whatever and making their way home. And just those little things, just looking after people and making their lives that little bit easier when they just had a particularly tough time getting out of their country.
So you really do a whole range of services, from overseas disasters to supporting hospitals and local events.
I won't say anything, but we've got a pretty broad range of activities that we'll turn our hands to.
Tell me about the makeup of you're all volunteers, aren't you?
So we do have something like just over 800 volunteers. I work for the organisation. I'm lucky enough to have recently retired from the civil service, and this job came about at the right time, and I really like what the organisation does and what it stands for, and it was a really good fit for me, and I'm delighted to say that when I applied for the job, I was I was lucky enough to get it. But yeah, we've got about 800 volunteers in the UK in total, and of those, probably about 45 to 50 in Wales. Always looking for new people.
How are they made up of?
So we've got a lot of people who are like myself, served in the military, and a number of people who have worked in the blue light services, and then we've got an awful lot of people who are just good people who want to help and support people when they've had a bad time. And what's really nice more recently is we've had people coming to us from disaster management courses in universities, various universities around the country, including in Wales, and they're able to bring that their theoretical knowledge and their understanding of how these things work, and then we can help them apply that in a practical sense. So that combination of our experience and background in doing these things in various parts of the world, and their energy, and most importantly their fresh legs is great. But they have fresh eyes as well. They see things slightly differently perhaps to some of us who've been doing it for a little while, and that's great because it keeps us on our toes and means that we are able to provide a better service to the people that we're there to help. So
you also need more volunteers. Tell us how you can apply to be a volunteer and what you're looking for.
So the way to become a volunteer, a responder as we call them, is to look at our website, which is www.re.act.org.uk, and there is a section on there to join us, and there's a process that we go through to get people into the organisation, and if people are interested in joining and helping out, then we're very welcome to start that conversation.
That's great. Thanks for coming along today.
No,
it's been really interesting hearing what you have to say. We have a little video that we're going to show now of some of the work that is being done. It wasn't taken by us, but you can enjoy it anyway. And once again, thanks, Rob. Now, unfortunately, Keith has got another engagement. He's going to fly. Well, he's not going to fly. He's going to walk off. And I have another guest that we're going to introduce now. So, Keith, thank you so much for coming down.
Thank you.
Your next show is coming up soon.
Yes.
In fact, we're going this afternoon to... What are we going to go?
We're going to Peter Pan. So you saying me flying off, I think I was the right cue, actually, because it's Peter Pan Jr. at Brangwyn Hall.
And when is that?
Well, it starts tomorrow, and it's on until Saturday. And it's the Afaneidd. It's the scouts and the guides that are putting the show together. First time they're doing a full musical as such, rather than a variety show.
Or a gang show,
yes.
Which I used to be in all the time when I was a scout. So Keith, this afternoon we'll go and talk to them and put it on your show, but thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I know you're in a hurry, so...
It's a pleasure, but thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
Good. Okay, so let's welcome Chris and say farewell to Keith. So off you pop, Keith, and take your heart with you.
I will.
So how about that, a quick change? Keith has gone, Chris is here, Chris Freestone, who, you'll love this, you'll really love it, is organising the Swansea Beer and Cider Festival, which runs tomorrow, Friday and Saturday. And tell us about it. Tell us about the festival.
So the festival, as you just said, runs Thursday through to Saturday. Over 100 real ales on offer for anyone who loves their real ale. Then anyone who doesn't, there's also 50 ciders available. There's also live music throughout. There's and entries £7 or £5 if you're a CAMRA member.
Right. And where is this?
It's in Brangwyn Hall. It is
in Swansea.
The big guild hall down by the seafront. Yes.
Okay. So that's great. Now, how did you start? How did this thought? Is it your idea, and Aaron's idea to start this, or how did it all happen?
No, me and my co-organiser, Aaron Todd, we took it over in 2019.
Right.
And it's been previously running since the 1970s.
Really?
Yes. It's been in a few different venues over the years, but it moved to the Brangwyn Hall in 2007. And it's growing bigger and bigger every year.
And the Brangwyn Hall is great because parking is often quite easy around there.
Yes, not that you'd want to drive there. No.
No, don't drink and drive. You might hit a bump and spill a lot.
So yes, how we took it over. So me and Aaron worked behind the bars previously in 2016, 17 and 18. Mm-hmm. And then the previous organiser, Chris Radford, he wanted to step down. And he told everyone this at the festival after party. And then me and Aaron might have had a few too many beers at this party and agreed to take over. And we both woke up the next morning a bit, what did we just agree to do?
Yeah. But it's been going well ever since.
Yes. Well, unfortunately, we ran the 2019 festival together, but then due to COVID, we've had to cancel more than we've ran.
Oh, gosh.
Yes.
So, was there one last year?
There wasn't, no. So it's the first one since 2019, so we're bringing it back.
That's great, isn't it? The problem with a lot of events, they'd finished, but they're not coming back again.
No.
And I think it's important to bring these events back. Tell us about CAMRA.
So CAMRA, it's the campaign for real ale. I think I'm not the most up to date on its history, but I believe it started in the 60s, 70s due to British ale declining in offering and quality. Mm-hmm. I think all the beers were becoming a keg lager beer, which if you enjoy, fair enough. But traditionally, British beer is cask conditioned in an ale. And so 5 guys got together, said they felt it was more being pushed by the breweries than by the consumer, that the range of ales on offer wasn't enough. So they got together, created CAMRA, and campaigned for pubs to start serving real beer. And it's been a great success.
That's throughout the UK, isn't it?
Throughout the UK, that is, yes.
So are there any CAMRA breweries in Swansea?
Yes, there are. We've got Mumbles and the Gower Brewery, who are actually headline sponsors of the festival themselves. And then there's loads of other breweries throughout Wales and the Swansea area. Swansea Brewery, Thomas Watkins, Grey Trees, Glamorgan, Brains.
Gosh.
Yes.
And cider?
Cider, yes.
It's the Heritage Centre?
Yeah, the Gower Heritage Centre creates cider. There's also Gwynty Dry, which is, I believe, is Wales' biggest cider producers. They're also a sponsor of the festival. Mm-hmm.
So how many people do you think are you hoping to have through the doors?
We're hoping just over 2,000, if it all goes well. It's really hard to judge the momentum and how much people are going to come back since 2019, but I think we've got the word out there.
And is the Saturday usually the busiest day?
Actually, the Friday, surprisingly, yes.
Right.
But Thursday's a bit quieter. You usually just get the real ale lovers there. Then the Friday gets really busy. We have the main music acts on the Friday. And then the Saturday, busy again, but yeah, the Friday night is the big night.
And what acts do you have?
So our biggest one this year is the Morriston Orpheus Choir.
Oh, right.
So yeah, well renowned, performed in some massive venues, been on tours through Europe, and we're very happy to have them. Yes.
I wonder with Aaron as your partner why that is so. He's a member, isn't he?
He is a member, yes, and also publicity officer of the choir, yes.
And they are fantastic.
They are, yes.
Yeah, we filmed them the other day. Yeah, that's great. Is there a message you want to give to anyone out there who wants to come along?
Get down there and enjoy a pint of real ale.
And don't drink and drive.
Don't drink and drive.
Yeah, that's great. So there'll be food as well, I guess.
Yes, there will be food on offer. From the Brangwyn kitchen staff. We don't organise the food ourselves. Yes.
Right, okay. Yes. Great. So, tomorrow, Friday and Saturday, Brangwyn Hall. If you're a drinker, be there and enjoy some real CAMRA ale. especially from some of our local Swansea breweries. Chris, thanks so much for coming down. I hope this is a really good success for you, and we'll have to talk to you after the event and see what happens.
Yes. No, thank you for having me. Yeah.
It's been a pleasure. So, there we are. We've got another show winding up. How disappointing. I'd like to have gone on and on with all of my guests because they've all got such interesting stories. Join me next time for another interesting Swan show. Bye for now.